Alright, hey there YouTubers. My name is Byron Campbell. I'm also known as Kitten Hoarder on Board Game Geek. And as a matter of fact, here's one of my cats now. His name is Jimmy, because he is left-handed. Hi Jim, as a result of a very unfortunate incident in his kittenhood when he was at a shelter. He had to have one of his legs amputated, so he is now completely left-handed cat. But he is nonetheless boisterous for it, and in fact, he's trying to eat my chess set today. So, today I'm going to be doing a really special playthrough video of a new game that is coming out. It's actually coming to Kickstarter. It should be going live around the time that this video goes public, and the name of the game is King Down. Yeah, Jim? Okay. The name of the game is King Down. It's from Saar Shai, the designer and publisher of The Agents, which I have a copy of right here. The Agents, which is a fantastic, fabulous little game. Jimmy agrees. At least as a two-player game, this is just fantastic. Which I've mainly played this as a two-player game. Jimmy, what? Sorry. I might have to re-record this intro, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, as a two-player game, really great. Plays very quickly, almost like a filler-length game, but with a ton of strategic and tactical depth to it. And it's one of the very few games that my wife, who is not really a gamer, will enjoy playing, and I enjoy playing just as much. So, I wasn't sure what to expect from King Down, though, because King Down is derived from the rules of chess, and it's advertised on the Kickstarter page as the prequel to chess. Which I'm not really sure what that means, but it definitely takes inspiration from chess, but it goes in a very different direction, as you will soon see. Now, I don't want to spend a long time doing an introduction video for this game, but I do want to make a couple of special points up front before we get into it. The first thing I wanted to make sure to make a note of is that this is a completely, what's the word? Basically, nobody asked me to do this playthrough. This is completely my own idea. The designer, Saar Shai, sent me a copy of the game to, get a feel for it, maybe give him some feedback, and do a written preview. But I was just so blown away by it, and so surprised, really, by how fun I found the game to be, that I wanted to do a playthrough. I had to do a playthrough because I think until you've played this game or seen how it's played, you don't really get how this is not your traditional chess game. So, with that out of the way, there are a couple of other points I wanted to make a note of. One is that this is very much a playthrough of the King Down beta. Now, the beta, the rules that Saar Shai sent me made a point of the fact that this is a beta, and it's really more of a demo, because it's a special set of rules that is intended so that people who have a chess set handy can experience the feel of the game, but it's not got all of the features that will make it into the full game. As an example, this beta version of King Down is 2 players only, like traditional chess, whereas the full game will support up to 4 players. And another thing is that, as it says here, King Down is set to be more than a game. It is destined to be a platform for chess-based army building and adventure seeking. So I really get the impression that the designer Saar Shai is intending this to be a really expandable game system. Sort of like, almost like a miniatures tactical combat game, but using the basic rules of chess to an extent. So even though the beta version is played using only pieces from an actual chess set, I believe that somewhere down the road he intends for there to be new types of pieces enter into the game that don't necessarily follow the normal rules of chess. And I also get the impression that you will at some point be able to essentially draft your own army, so that both sides are not necessarily playing the exact same pieces against each other. So, this is definitely not to be taken as representative of what you would get if you were to back the King Down Kickstarter. I want to make that very clear, and I also want to make very clear that I am not necessarily the best player at this game, so please don't take any choices that I make during the game as representative of the best strategy. And also, of course, as with any prototype, the rules are subject to change. Even the ones that he hasn't explicitly stated, you know, there's more rules coming. This doesn't represent every element of the finished game. The last point that I wanted to make is that I am traditionally a solo gamer. Primarily a solo gamer in my gaming life. I did play King Down 5 or 6 times with my wife as a 2-player game, just to get a solid feel for how the game plays. So while I think I can give you a pretty good opinion of how the game plays as a 2-player game, I'm going to be playing it today as a solitaire game, but playing both sides competitively against each other. This is not something that I traditionally do. Some solitaire gamers do enjoy this method of play. I typically go for games that are designed to be played solo, or cooperative games that you can play multiple sides and they're all working on the same team, or games with a variant with some sort of AI simulating an opponent so that I don't have to be playing multiple sides facing off against each other. So this is not something that I normally do. So beyond the fact that I'm not necessarily the best expert on the strategy of this game, I might not be making the best strategic choices simply because I will be playing both sides, which is not something that I'm really used to. But I'm going to try it because I just thought this was such a fabulous game to try to show you. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight to the next video. The first thing I have to tell you is that the only thing that you're seeing that's at all representative of what you'd get in the game if you were to back King Down on Kickstarter are these cards. Everything else has been supplied by myself, and it's just a standard travel chess set with certain of the pieces removed. And I will be playing King Down as a 2-player game today, with the white player versus the black player, your standard face-off in a chess game. And as luck would have it, the backs of the cards for the white and black player match the colors of my chess pieces. Just by coincidence, the black player's cards have a yellow backing, which nicely matches the gold coloration of my, quote, black chess pieces. But all that aside, that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about King Down. So, the goal of King Down is not, as in a traditional chess game, to capture the opponent's king. The goal of King Down is to be the first player to reach 8 victory points during the game. And this is done by some variation, some combination of having pieces in the 4 central spaces on the board here, that's known as the capital, and by capturing opponent's pieces. Each piece that you have that belongs to you in the capital earns you 1 victory point. Each captured piece of an opponent that you have earns you 1 victory point. Kings, whether they're captured or they're in the capital, are worth 2 victory points each. And through some combination of those, you need to be the first player to get to 8 victory points. Now, one thing that's a little unique about King Down, compared to many games, is that your victory point total does not always go up. It quite often can go down. For instance, if you have a piece in the capital and it's either captured or you move it out of the capital, your victory point total will go down. If you have captured an opponent's piece, they have certain means by which they can bring that piece, take that piece out of your jail, for lack of a better word, reclaim that captured piece, and thereby robbing you of that victory point, and also getting the ability of using that piece again. How do you get these pieces onto the board? You'll notice that none of the pieces are on the board yet. Well, in each turn of King Down, you are given a choice of 4 actions that are sort of your basic standard actions, or playing cards. So the 4 basic actions are call. And call is you can take any piece here, any piece that's in your camp, and in the King Down beta, each player has 4 pawns, or also known as pikes in the game's terminology, 2 knights or steeds, 1 rook or rock, 1 bishop or cross, 1, where is this, the queen, 1 queen or thorn, and 1 king called the king, just like in regular chess. Although, each color of king has slightly different special abilities and a different name. The white king in this version of the game is called King Cumulus. I believe he's called King Stratus, according to the Kickstarter page, in the Finnish version of the game. The black king is King Mud. So, how do you get the pieces onto the board? The first action that you have available to you is call. And call costs 4 action points. Each turn you have 4 action points available to spend. So to call, you could take any of these pieces that you have in your camp, spend your entire turn's worth of action points, and put the piece on the board. You can only call a piece onto a space in your front line. And your front line is the center 6 spaces on the far edge of the board closest to you. If we were playing a 4-player game, there would also be a front line here and a front line here. In a 2-player game, there's a front line here and a front line here only. So, I could spend 4 action points to call this piece. Say the piece is already on the board. One thing to note is that when I call or summon a piece, that piece is considered to have summoning sickness, which should be a term familiar to any Magic the Gathering players. Basically, this piece cannot be moved or otherwise manipulated on the turn that it comes out. Now, you wouldn't be able to do that anyway if you spent all 4 of your action points putting it into play, but there are other ways to put these pieces into play, which I will explain in a little bit. So I could spend 4 action points to call the queen, put her into play. If she was already in play, let's say on the next turn, I could spend 2 action points to move the queen. And I can move the queen exactly as I would in a standard game of chess, basically in a straight line in any direction. However, let's say the board was set up like this, and I wanted to move ending in a capture. This is a special action in the game called take. A normal move action costs 2 action points, but if your move ends in a capture, ends in you taking the opponent's piece, it costs 3 action points. So I could move all the way up to this rook, or rock, and not capture it for 2 action points, but if I wanted to take the rock, it would cost me 3 action points. Another important rule to note is that you cannot take any piece that is in the front line, which are these spaces in which you are allowed to call your pieces. So you can never take an opponent's piece from their front line. The final basic action that you can take is drawing cards. For 1 action point, you can draw an additional card. At the end of your turn, you discard down to your hand size. You could discard additional cards in order to draw up to your hand size. Your hand size starts at 3, but it can increase based on the number of pieces that you have in the capital. Now remember, it's part of the goal of the game to get pieces into the capital, because each piece in the capital is worth 1 victory point. At the same time, each piece in the capital increases your hand size by 1. So you start out with a hand size of 3. If I had my queen or thorn in the capital, I would then have a hand size of 4 for that turn. You may also play cards from your hand. And to do that, it costs the number of action points shown on the card. Every card has a cost in action points. I will explain that as I get into the first turn of the game, which is probably going to be in the next video. But to close out the explanation of the basic rules of the game, I will just say that there are 2 types of cards. And I'm going to look at the white player's hand and see if they have both types of cards present. They actually do, so this is a great example. So, if I look at this hand, they have 1 calling card and 2 spell cards. And I can tell that they have calling cards and spell cards because the calling cards depict one of the pieces used in the game, in this case the cross or bishop. The calling card costs 2 action points. Now, when you play a calling card, you basically get a free call action for that piece. So normally, if I were just to use a basic action without playing any cards, it would cost me my entire turn 4 action points to call the cross. However, if I played this card, I could call the cross for only 2 action points. That's a huge savings. However, I can only do that with cards that are actually in my hand. If I wanted to call a piece that I don't have in my hand, I'd have to pay the full cost of 4. Once this piece is on the board, I could play the calling card again to perform the action listed on the card. And the action of the cross is that for 2 action points, which is the cost of the card, I can do a move or take action. Now, a standard move action costs 2 action points to begin with. However, there might be a reason I might want to play this calling card just to have it out, which I'll explain in a second, in which case I get a move action for free for doing that. Or I could have it be a take action, which will cost me only 2 action points instead of the standard 3 action points. So all of a sudden, when normally I can only do if I'm going to do a take action, it costs me 3 action points, so I don't have a chance to move and take in the same turn. All of a sudden, if I did a move action and then played my calling card to do a take action, I could do them both in the same turn. Because a standard move action costs 2, this card costs 2, so that's a total of 4. So then I could do a little bit more advanced move, and I could take a piece even if I'm not set up to take the piece at the end of my previous turn. And these often have additional special abilities, such as this one says, this is explained further in the rulebook, and I'm assuming that the text on these cards is subject to change. But this one says, basically, that if I play this and I use this card to move the cross, so that means I've already called the cross on a previous turn, I'm moving the cross now. If I use this piece to move, I can move to an adjacent tile. So, anybody who's played chess knows that the bishop moves diagonally. And because they always move diagonally, they are limited to the color of space that they're sitting on. However, you can break that rule in king down by playing the calling card. All of a sudden, move to an adjacent space, and I shift from only being able to move on black to being able to move on white. Huge, huge deal for anybody who's familiar with the strategies of chess. Additionally, in my hand, I have 2 spell cards. Now, spell cards, you can tell that they're spell cards because they do not depict one of the pieces on them. They depict something else. And there are probably going to be other iconographic touches that show you that you're holding a spell card versus a calling card. In any case, a spell card can only be played on a calling card that's in play. Now, a calling card only remains in play until the start of your next turn, which means you basically have to play this card, it costs you 2, and then you can play one of these spells on top of it. So, that is why I said earlier you might want to play this just to have it out, and then while you're doing it, you might as well take advantage of the move action, even though you're not actually saving any AP to play the card to move versus just doing a standard move. If you play the card, you have it out, you can then play one of these spells on it. And the spells basically are an additional special ability that apply to the card of the type, to apply to the piece of the type that you played the spell on. So if I played this, I have a cross out on the board somewhere, I could then play Firewall on him to swap positions, swap my cross with any other piece on the board. So if it's set up like this, and for whatever reason I want him to be over here, I could play Firewall and move him like that. Now, one thing to note is that I can't play the spell and do the action on the spell and then do the action on the calling card. I have to fully complete the action on the calling card, or choose not to take the action at all, because that's always an option. You can play a calling card just to have it out, not do the action listed, and then play and resolve the spell card. But I can't play the spell card and then resolve the text on the card, on the calling card. Alternately, I could play this cross card and then play this growth card on it, which says that this calling card that I played the growth card on costs 1 action point less next turn, which means I could play this card for just 1 action point next turn. I might want to do that if maybe I have a more expensive spell that I want to play on it next turn, or I want to be able to do this, to do a move first and then do a take action, which costs 3 action points. So if I'm able to play this card for only 1 action point, I can do the take action for 3, using up my full 4 action points for the turn. So, as the white player always goes first, as in chess. I can play any of these cards, or I can do any of the actions listed in the previous video. Now, I can't really do anything until I get some pieces out on the board. So I'm going to start out by playing the cross card. Put the cross card into play, which will allow me to call my cross. And I can put it anywhere on my front line. Any of these 6 spaces. I can't put it on the very edge spaces, but I can put it at any of these 6 spaces. And I'm going to place him here so that in one diagonal movement on a later turn I can put him straight into the capital. So I've played my cross card, which costs 2 action points. Now he can't move this turn because he has Summoning Sickness, so I can't really do anything else. It'll cost me 4 action points to call another piece because I don't have any more calling cards in my hand. So pretty much my only choice is to draw cards or to play one of these spells. Now I can't really play the Firewall spell because it says swap positions with any other piece. There's no pieces out on the board yet. However, I can and will play this Growth spell so that the cross piece next turn is going to cost me 1 action point less. I'm basically banking this action point. So for 1 action point, I have reduced the cost of this calling card, which is normally 2, to just 1 action point for the next turn. And hopefully that'll give me some more flexibility next time. And finally, I'm going to draw a card. So this next card is Salvation. And this is a spell that will allow me to return a piece to my camp that has previously been taken. So now I have to end my turn and I have to discard down to my hand size. My hand size is 3 at the start of the game because I have no pieces in the capital. So I can't do anything with these 2 cards that are in play because they are in play. I can't manipulate them in any way. I can choose to discard one or both of these cards, and if I discard both of them, I draw back up to my hand size, because I will have discarded 2. These 2 that are in play count toward my hand size, so I would draw 1 additional card. And that's what I think I'll do. I don't really have any use for this Salvation card this early in the game, because none of my pieces have been taken, and I'm going to hope to get a better calling card. So I'm going to draw, and I'm not going to look at what it is yet, because in order to preserve the uncertainty of playing against an opponent, a real opponent, I'm going to try not to have any advanced knowledge of what's in the white player's hand in between turns. So we're going to now go to the black player. Now because the black player goes second, he starts out with 4 cards, and this is a great hand because it includes the most powerful piece in any chess game, including the prequel to chess, King Down, the Thorn or Queen. And I'm almost certainly going to be playing this to put the Queen into play. However, I could also alternately play the Rock to put the Rook or Rock into play. The Salvation card, again, is not really useful, and this is another spell, which is if whatever let's say I play this onto the Thorn. If the Thorn had been captured or taken by the black player's opponent in a previous turn, I could then take a piece from the board costing 1 action point less. So the action point cost of the Thorn is 3, so I could take any piece from the board that has an action point cost of 2 or less on their calling card. That's really powerful. So I think I'm going to keep this curse card definitely in hand, even though I won't necessarily be using it right away. But if this Thorn gets captured, I could then repeatedly, combo, because 3 and 1 adds up to 4 action points, combo these to capture for free without having to move any pieces on the board, any piece that costs 2 action points or less, which is every piece in the game except for the Thorn. There might be cards with, pieces with a higher action point cost in some of the new pieces that are going to be introduced later on during the Kickstarter and expansions, but in this set, the Thorn is the most expensive piece. So, definitely going to start out by playing Thorn, which means the the black player gets to call the thorn. Now, I could put her here, and so that she has a straight shot to the cross to capture or take the cross. However, remember that there's a rule that you cannot take a piece that is in somebody's front line. So I don't think I'm going to do that. Instead, I'm going to put her here. So, if this cross moves into the capital, following its normal diagonal movement, the thorn will then be able to take him. So it's sort of a preventative measure. Although, well, then if the cross doesn't move, I can move the thorn here, and he won't be able to take me because he can only move diagonally. So that seems like a good move. I'm going to place her there, and then I have one more action point. I don't really have any cards that I want to play for that, so I'm just going to draw a card, and it's a pike, which is your standard pawn. And I believe I'm going to keep that in hand, so that's 1, 2, and I'm going to keep that cursed card in hand for 3. I just realized I shouldn't have looked at that because I didn't look at the white player's cards, but oh well. And discard these other 2. Or should I keep the rock? Yeah, I think the black player, the rock is an inherently more powerful piece, so the black player is going to keep this rock and this cursed card and discard these other 2 spells. Okay, at the end of his turn, he discards down to his hand size, which is what I just did, and play proceeds back to the white player. So the white player is going to pick back up all of his cards that are in play, together with his cards in hand, and play his next turn. So we can see that this card that I drew at the end of my turn last time was the Steed. The Steed is a great calling card, because for an action point cost of 2, you can summon both steeds. So that is exactly what I'm going to do, because I can see that the thorn is threatening me if I move into the capital. So 2 action points, going to summon both steeds, and I believe I will just put them here and here to try to get a sort of, I don't know, keep my options open. There's no particular placement I have to do. I could put them there and there if I wanted them side by side, but I'm going to, try and be a little symmetrical and put them there and there. Remember, I played the growth card on the cross last turn, so I can play this for 1 action, which is 1 move or take, and can move to an adjacent tile. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. For 1 action point, I'm going to play this calling card for the cross and move him to an adjacent space, so that no longer is he under threat from the queen. He can move diagonally to this space and not be captured in a single movement. Then with 1 action point remaining, I could choose either draw an additional card or reduce the cost of the steed for next turn. And I believe, or the cross again, for that matter, by playing the growth spell. And I believe that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play the growth spell onto the steed, reduce the cost for next turn, and therefore my hand stays exactly the same because all of my cards in my hand are in play. I can't discard any of them. Just finished with the white player's turn, the white player's second turn of the game, in which he moved his cross or bishop sideways. Very cool move, not allowed in typical chess rules, and put out 2 of his steeds. We're going to go back to the black player, who has put out his thorn or queen. And the black player's in a bit of a quandary now, because originally he had set himself up so that he could protect the capital from the cross moving into it, because if the cross moves into the capital, the black player could capture or take the cross in one movement. And if the cross didn't move into the capital, the black player was going to move here, which would be safe. However, now this space is not safe. I guess it could move in here, but would that be safe from the steeds? It wouldn't. And here's why. We already know that the steed card costs 2 action points. It's going to cost 1 action point next turn because of this growth spell. For 1 action point, you can have 1 move or take action with the steed. A standard move action costs 2 action points. So in the same turn, the white player could go 1-2 for standard move action, play the steed card, which has been reduced to a cost of 1, to do a take action, and take the queen. However, there is one thing that the white player doesn't know, and that is that the black player has this curse card. If the thorn gets captured, the black player could combo the thorn calling card, which would then be useless. It wouldn't be able to do anything, but you could put it into play and then play the curse card on top of it to take a piece from the board costing 2 action points or less on its calling card. Both of the pieces that the white player has in play cost 2 action points. So every turn, without having to move any pieces around the board, the black player could be taking these pieces that the white player has put out. So I think that the white player, or the black player in this case, is going to play a little bit risky and is going to go there. A pretty aggressive move, already occupying a position in the capital, and is set up to potentially be captured, which would actually possibly be a good thing. Even though you're losing control of your most powerful piece in the game, you're enabling this really powerful combo to capture pieces without having to do any work. So that costs 2 action points, and for 2 more action points, he's going to put his rock into play. Rock, also known as the rook. And just to make it extra enticing, to have that queen captured, he's going to put the rock into play in a position that will be able to capture anybody who attempts to capture the queen. So these cards will remain in his hand. However, now that he has a piece in the capital, he can have an increased hand size of 4. So I'm going to take these cards, keep them in hand, and draw 1 additional card, which I won't look at. And that is the end of that turn. Alright, well, hopefully that is enough to give you a good sense of what King Down plays like. I originally had planned to play a full game. After a few turns, I was getting a little tongue-tied, and I figured, you'd probably seen about enough to give you a sense of the game. And once again, keep in mind that that is not nearly everything that you would get if you backed King Down on Kickstarter. The designer, Saar Shai, sent me a preview link of the Kickstarter campaign. It'll be live by the time this video goes public, and wow. I mean, as you already saw, King Down allows you to have these familiar sort of situations from chess, these familiar ways that the pieces move, capture each other, these familiar sort of showdown moments of chess that are sort of dynamically being built as you summon new pieces onto the battlefield. But what you didn't get to see, and what will be in the full game, there are also a bunch of new pieces that are not in a traditional chess game that have completely new functions, but still, somehow interrelated to the standard rules of chess. For example, there's a guard character who can't be captured at all. He can't capture other pieces, but he can't be captured. So, park that guy in the middle of the capital, put your king behind him, and you've got your king guarded from one direction. And you're scoring 3 points right there. Another piece was the paladin, who can... what was his ability? He has, like, a really... I think he has, like, a really strong movement ability, similar to the queen. But as soon as he takes a piece, he gets taken as well. So he's like a one-time use character. And there's also archers who can take pieces from afar without having to move themselves. A lot of different, strategic possibilities come up when you start adding those other pieces in. The miniatures are going to look fantastic. You didn't really get a sense of that from my play video because, obviously I just had the regular chess pieces. But the miniatures look fabulous. Check them out in the link that I'm going to put in the video description for this video. I'm going to definitely put a link to the Kickstarter page, so definitely go check it out. What do I think of King Down? Honestly, I was very, very surprised by how much I liked this game. I'm not a big chess player. I haven't played chess for years. But this just immediately, as soon as I started playing, I was having fun. And, you don't get that from every game, even some really good games. But this just feels right. I mean, it's got those solid foundations of chess, which has been around for centuries. It has proven itself to be a solid game. And it takes that as a foundation and it adds a bunch of little touches onto it that add excitement for people like me who really like exploring new game systems and new possibilities and new variations. When you play a game of King Down, instead of the static opening situation of every chess game, you're always having a different combination of pieces that you can play, pieces that your opponent has in play, spells that you can play on your calling cards, and you always are going to have different strategic and tactical possibilities come up, which you can't necessarily say in a game of chess. So definitely enjoy it. One thing I will say is that The Agents, which was the designer's previous game, is a game that both my wife and I love. My wife loves it because it plays quickly, it's something that she can handle in terms of complexity, but at the same time it has a level of strategic and tactical depth that speaks to me. So that is a solid hit for both of us. King Down, she wasn't really a fan of, and I think it's because it has that level of aggression that you find in a game of chess, and even more magnified, because you can do moves that you wouldn't be able to do normally, like taking a piece, from halfway across the board, if you play the right combination of cards. So it has a bit of a aggressive, in-your-face confrontational feel, which will be good for some people, and a turnoff for others. But, for gamers, for people who are more casual gamers but don't mind that aggressive confrontational element, I'd say it has the making to be another classic along the lines of chess, honestly. It's a little bit more digestible, but it's... fuck. But anyway, to make a long story short, King Down is a fabulous game, and I can prove that my opinion is genuine because this playthrough video that I did was, completely spontaneous. I did this just because I had so much fun with the game and was so surprised by how well it played that I wanted to share it, with the world. Because I think just reading the rules, you don't necessarily get a sense of just how well this game works. It's not just a modification of chess. It is a completely new game and a fun game. A little bit more digestible than chess. I'd say will appeal to a broader audience. And at the same time, it has that level of, trying to outsmart your opponent that, is instantly familiar to anybody who's played a good game of chess. So definitely go check out the Kickstarter page. It looks like there's going to be reward levels where you just get the cards and you can proxy your own miniatures, or reward levels that come with the miniatures, and there's some really cool bonuses like the camp sort of pen and the jail pen for your captured pieces. That's going to be a Kickstarter exclusive. Those look really cool. Some really cool stretch goals, so definitely go check it out. King down. I wanted to also introduce you to my other kitty. This is Harvey. Those of you who are Batman fans will probably be able to guess why. She's a little more shy than Jimmy, so she wants down now, I think.